Okay. Right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the operational board. Here we are again. Nights are getting lighter, so the spirits will be getting lifted. So that's good. Start with apologies. I'm only aware of one apology. You said you got no more, Louise? No. Jan contacted me to say she might be running late. I won't give you the story, but it's medically. Her mother's had an accident, and she's jumping backwards and forwards, and she might make it and might be late. So I said, just sort your mum out, and we'll all deal with it. So it's only one apology I'm aware of. Welcome, Steve.
Evening, Bob. Evening, everybody.
Right. I'm not aware of any admission of late items. Nope. Okay. Declarations of interest apart from the usual ones. I've got no changes. I'm not aware of any changes, but nope. Okay, that's good. Right, we'll now carry on with the minutes of the meeting held on the 9th of December. Right. We'll go through them first for accuracy. Page 1. And just stop me if you've got any points, Tony. You're muted, Tony.
Yeah, I wanted to point out I was at the last operations board meeting.
You pick that up, Louise. Thank you, Tony. Page 2. Accuracy.
Sorry, Chair. Mike and I are in a virtual world on our own. We're in a separate meeting, so.
They're probably trying to tell you something, Ian, but
Yes.
far be it from me.
We had a lovely time, but it's just we weren't in the right place.
Yeah, I think the confusion was the invites when one of them said new, and the new one was for this one. So
anyway,
easier now. Okay, page 3.
Chair.
Yep.
Top of the first paragraph at the end of it. I think there's a typo. It didn't seem to make sense. Council towards new build properties opposed to purchasing acquisition. Is it opposed as a oppose?
I would believe that would be the case, Tony, yeah. Yep, picked up, yeah. Well done, I didn't spot that. Page 4 of the previous minutes. No hands up, no. Page 5. Page 6. Page 7. Page 8. Page 9. And page 10.
And page 11.
Oh yes, Tony, sorry, page 11.
How are you able to approve the minutes before we've approved them ourselves?
I wondered why they were signed as well.
I can honestly say I can't answer that. I think it's probably a transcript from or signed some previous minutes, and they may have got slipped. I wasn't aware of that these being signed, so I apologise for that. Any matters arising? Page 1. Page 2. Page 3.
Chair.
Yep.
The bit near the bottom, third paragraph up, Derby Homes confirmed that the long-term plan is to get all Derby Homes properties to EPC Band C rating by 2030. Is it possible for tenants and residents to see what the Derby Homes reckon their current rating is?
Pick that up for me.
Well, I suppose anyone could if they. I mean, the information is freely available, but yes, we could. Yeah, we could tell them. Yes, it's actually available on a national website. If you want to have a look for it. So.
All right. Okay,
Tony.
thank you.
But if someone wrote in, of course we'd tell them, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe it's something we could do on updating our website.
Maybe, yeah.
Put the
Yeah, I
link
mean,
on there.
we'd want to improve the asset data on our website, but whether we'd want to put a file that size.
No, I meant
Yeah.
more the link to the website
Of
where you
course,
said
You could put a
customers
link
can
in,
go and
yeah,
have a look at it.
Yeah.
Lucy?
I'm not an expert on this. Somebody else may correct me, but I think that the EPC rating is the last time it was checked, which could be any time in the last 10 years.
Yes.
So if there
Yes.
has been work done on the house more recently, that information on the national website won't be up to date and is therefore misleading.
If
True.
we'd done significant energy efficiency work, we'd redo the EPC.
Right. Okay.
We often have
Yeah.
to get the grant.
Right. Oh, I see. Yeah. Michael?
Yeah, just to add to what Lucy said, because to be fair, the board raised this issue exactly. The EPC rating on a number of properties is out of date because although some significant energy efficiency work was done as part of the Decent Homes programme, there wasn't a requirement at that stage to do a retrospective EPC rating. So the government website one is probably out of date. If we were to proactively disclose the EPC rating for all 12,500 properties, that would be quite an undertaking. So I think we need to be careful on what we're asking for here.
Can I make a suggestion? When they have the annual gas safety check, could it be incorporated as a paragraph? Your EPC rating is that difficult?
What do we hand to the customers when they have their property? Do we
It
give them
comes electronically now, I think, for most people, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, I don't think you'd want to tamper with that form, but
Fine.
It's not impossible. There's some way of.
Yeah, but if we make a note of action. Okay.
Have a look at it.
Is that it? Page 4. Page 5.
Chair again.
Yep. Go on, Tony.
State's Pride. Derby Homes confirmed that all new builds will include charging points for electric cars.
Yes.
Is there any plans to do anything retrospectively for existing properties?
Not at the moment.
May I say, it seems a little. Is there any plans at all? Because it does seem unfair that, if you're going to do new build, you're going to get your point put in. But if you're in, I mean, I could probably get a point put in my drive, but not everybody's got that facility.
Yeah, but it's the scale of the provision we've got to consider. I mean,
Yeah.
we are developing our green strategy continuously, and even now we're having a debate, even on new build, about how we make that provision available to people with flats, for example. It's far more difficult.
Yeah.
So
it's ongoing.
Yeah, it's not being thought about, but again, there's all sorts of things about infrastructure, because if everyone had charging points in the homes, then we'd have to up the ability to supply those properties with energy, etc. So it's being thought about. It's definitely being thought about, Chair. It's just we haven't got any plans.
And I'm sure, and we're not the only housing organisation with this problem. It just seems, they've made the decision and they want rid of electric cars, but we need charging preferably home charging points. Lucy.
I just say I think this is an important issue, but the Western Power Distribution would have difficulty if every house had a charging point, because it would add to their potential capacity issues in that area. And there might be an alternative to look at being able to put community charging points in, so that so that estates could have them on bits of land, in the same way as we get some bits of grassed area that become hard standing. It might be that somewhere like that could be more appropriate to do it, but it does need a strategy, and maybe it's something that should be referred back to the board to consider.
I think so.
Sounds sensible.
Yeah. It is the future as we see it. So yes.
Yeah.
Michael.
Yeah, I think we just need to clarify that statement. Where Derby Homes is building the new build, there is an intention wherever possible to install the charging points, but where the council is acquiring properties off the market or having new builds off the market, no developer is putting electric charging points in as standard, because developers will only build current building control standards.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
and obviously there's quite an extra cost by putting charging points in. So it will only be on a very, very few number of properties where Derby Homes is doing the new build
Right.
that it would be considered. So it's
Okay.
certainly very, very at the start of its
potato.
infancy. It's start of the infancy. It's not going to be on any large scale at all.
Right. Lorraine?
I just wanted to mention, Lucy, you may remember at an earlier board meeting, you asked me to link up with some of the council staff who were looking at car sharing facilities. I did have a meeting with them, and one of the things we talked about was potentially using office sites or a community room, but we thought maybe the office site would be better, where we could maybe have a car share and a communal charging point. But I've never heard anything back from that, Lucy.
It doesn't surprise me, but it may be something that you could follow up again. I think that there's a team who are looking at trying to see how we're going to expand that as a service across the whole of the city. But I suspect that there are quite a lot of barriers, and it might be something that Derby Homes can pick up and do earlier on, if there's the appetite.
You don't remember the name of the gentleman who I spoke to, do you?
No, but I will consult my email and see if I can find it, and I'll put it in the chat when I do.
Okay, thank you. I left it with them, and they said they've got some work to do, and I mean they may well still be doing that, you know. But I'm just it was followed up, and it was an option at the time.
Okay, I will try and find the name again, and you can pick it up.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Are you on mute, Bob?
John, this thing does its own thing. I'm on page 9.
Could you just go back to page 8 then?
Yeah, of course I can, Tony.
Near the bottom, it says it was confirmed Derby Homes would query what the council is doing in terms of recruiting the grounds maintenance service. As the year is about to start on grounds maintenance, any update?
Yeah, so to full establishment, I understand. So they're waiting for a couple of people to start. Yeah,
that's good. In fact, I'll say that's a positive.
Just hope they stay in post. That's the thing.
Well, good management, and they'll stay in post. Page 10. And finally, page 11, which shouldn't have been signed as such, but it has been signed. For that, I apologise. I think the wrong set of papers were signed. So thanks for pointing that out, Tony. Okay. Right, moving on. Before I start Chair's announcements, I'm conscious, I do this most meetings, I'm conscious we've not done introductions yet. So if we could go around and do introductions, you all know who I am, Bob McDonald, Chair of the Operational Board. Lucy?
Hi, I'm one of the councillors who is on the main board as well. I represent Clover, in case people want to know.
Kevin?
Oh, hi, Kevin Alloway. I'm a Derby Homes tenant.
Louise?
I'm Louise Paget and I'm the Governance Officer for Derby Homes.
Michael?
Hi, I'm Michael Kirk. I'm the Head of Finance and Income and currently the Interim Finance Director.
James?
Hello, yes, I'm James Joyce. I'm the Interim Head of Housing Options and Homelessness.
And Tony?
I'm Tony Home. I'm the leaseholder representative on the Operations Board.
Steve?
Yes, hi, I'm Stephen Bayliss and I am the Head of Repairs.
Lorraine?
Hi, I'm Lorraine Tester. I'm the Head of Housing Management.
And Jenny, welcome, I believe, your first meeting.
It is, thank you. I'm Jenny Watson. I'm the Social Housing Options Manager in our Housing Options team.
Okay, well, Josh is in the background, he's comms, so Chloe?
Hi, I'm Chloe Gilman. I work in strategy and performance as a improvement support officer at Derby City Council.
Nice to see you, Chloe.
And you.
Kaz?
Councillor Hoter, I'm Strategy and Performance Team DCC, supporting Derby Homes on performance and business planning.
Thank you. Jeanne, you made it. Welcome.
Hi everybody, I'm Jeanne Shepherd. I'm one of the main board members and vice chair of operational board as well.
You did well to get here. Dennis?
Yeah, my name's Dennis Rees. I'm a tenant, and apologies for being late, but
No
we
problem.
got on the wrong link with Mike. Me and Mike was having a good chat.
Oh well, you should have joined Ian Yeomans as well. He did the same shout. Mike?
Yep, I'm Mike Ainsley. I'm chair of the main board. Yeah, I've had two separate conversations, one with Ian and one with Dennis. I clicked on two wrong links before I got in here, so my apologies.
If I've missed anybody, I deeply apologise. But looking at the screen, I think I've covered everybody. If I've not mentioned you, please say. That's great.
Yes, I'm Ian Yeomans, Bob, head of Capital Works. So.
Oh, I thought I'd have you talk for that. Was you apologising?
Don't worry. I'm easily forgotten. Don't worry.
Well,
Speak was all the time. But
what can you say? Right, announcements from the chair. There's not that many announcements really, but the one main announcement I think I would make, and it affects the meetings, and I think it'd be seen as a positive move. Lorraine and I I've been thinking for a while, how can we get the meeting to run smoother, but timely, but cover everything? So what we've decided is, the important thing on statistics that Kaz is going to do is cover the exception reports, the areas where we're not performing, red lines, if you like, rather than go through the whole report. And that way we'll be seen to cover the important things, but without going into great detail and everything else. And I think, Lorraine and I have spoken, and I think it will work well. What I'll do is at the end of this session, we'll ask how you think it's gone. I think from Kaz's point of view, it'll be a much slicker presentation, but we'll get all the information. And I think, I hope you'll give us a support. I think it's the best way to go forward. And I've only got one other thing to say, that is I've started this week going around many departments in the business, and I'm quite heartened by the people I've spoken to already, who are all smiling and saying it's good to be back in the office, it's good to see you, Bob, and some even shook my hand, so that's great, and everybody's in high spirits. Lorraine, have you anything to add on the stats?
No, that's fine. As I said, we were just going to cover the highlights and the exceptions over a couple of slides, and then obviously get your feedback as to whether you think that's okay, you'd like more, and then we can take it from there, really, just so that the meeting's not going on forever.
Thanks, Lorraine. That's that one then. No. Right, Kaz, take it away.
Thanks, Chairs. Just to explain the report, then obviously request from last quarter was to sort of streamline the report, concentrate on exceptions, and sort of cover the key issues. So Lorraine's outlined that. So Lorraine, Michael, Ian, Steve, other colleagues will be taking you through this. But just to explain, it's the performance summaries that you need, which is a third link, point 2, and it'll open up into the slides. First slide is covering slide. So the next slide really is just covering highlights. So it's just looking at where we're on track, where we're performing better than target, and improvements from last quarter. And then the second slide is the exceptions. So these are the areas that we need to concentrate on in terms of still sort of being behind performance in terms of Q3 or our forecast. So those are sort of key areas, that's the highlights. And then further on, we'll be going into obviously, key areas. So I don't know whether colleagues want to sort of take over from that in terms of the key areas, but we are actually going through the slides, and I don't know whether Lorraine will want to sort of cover that in terms of those key summary slides, Lorraine.
Yeah, okay, I'll just share the slides.
Thanks. Brilliant.
Are you able to see them?
I can see them at home, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
It's gone. There we are.
Right, okay, so I'm going to do the highlight slide, and then I believe that Ian and Michael are going to take you through the exceptions. So the Q3 highlights, so on track are all of our satisfaction measures, which is obviously great news for us. I was at a Housemark conference today, hearing that a lot of housing organisations, the satisfaction levels have actually dropped and there's a downward trend. So it's very encouraging to see that ours are still doing well. Rent arrears, that's also on track, and property compliance maintenance. Performing better.
Interrupt you and ask you if you can put them on full screen.
Yeah, hang on a minute. Why has that not gotten on to full screen? Let me just page view. Can anybody help me out?
I'm not techie, I'm sorry. It's not there, is it?
If you just click on the, Lorraine, if you just click on the plus in the middle of the top bar, it should zoom in on your slides and that should fill the screen.
Oh, I see it, yeah.
Has that worked?
Yeah,
No.
but you ought to be doing it as a presentation. So is it F4 or is there a button at the edge somewhere? Page view you've done, haven't you? Have you? Which will help.
Yeah, is that any better, or is it?
It's okay for me.
It's certainly readable now.
Is it?
It's better, Lorraine.
Guys, I'm not very good at these sort of things, unfortunately. Is okay. So if everybody can see it, then so now if we look at what's performing better than target, so the number of tenants evicted due to rent arrears, that's performing better than target. Actual 3, target 23, forecast 10, actual 35. So hang on, let me just try and understand that. Number of tenants evicted due to rent arrears. 3 against the target of 23, and the forecast was 10.
Yeah, the forecast for the year end is now 10. It will actually be lower than that. It should actually say the original target for the year was 35, but that assumed a full year of court enforcement.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Satisfaction with views taken into account. The actual figure is 83.2 against a target of 75%.
Good.
Derby Advice Service, the actual is 99% satisfaction against a target of 90%, which again is fantastic. And the average time to relet local authority homes is 21.5 days, a target of 24 days. And I do believe, I know Jenny's on the call, but it's likely to be getting even better again this month. So
oh yeah, but let's not say it. Let's save it for next time.
Okay.
Okay, to know.
But yeah, we've worked really hard on this, and it is showing the results now, because we're getting less and less on this. So really pleased about that one. So if I move on to Michael and Ian again, can people see that?
I can see it. Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm going to take the first part of this. I think is that the right way around, Ian?
Yeah, it's fine, Michael. Yep.
Okay.
Last time.
Yeah, so I don't know why we get the bad news, Ian, but never mind. Anyway, the couple of areas where it's shown as off track. The first one is on the sickness figures, which is showing that we're looking to forecast it 9.5 days this year against the rather low target of 7, which I think last year we had in a perverse way we had a good year, probably because although I think a lot of us were working from home and there was just naturally less normal levels of sickness, and we exclude COVID related absences from these figures.
Right.
So we're seeing quite a big increase from last year, and it's now come out at 9.5 days. When we drill down, one of the main drivers for that increase is an increase in absences through stress and anxiety, mental health related absences. And I think it's no surprise, this is not unique to Derby Homes. It's no surprise that with a lot of people now working from home, getting accustomed to the new norm, if you like, and is providing a challenge. So it is an area that we're conscious of, and we need to support those individuals who are struggling at this time. What
we're seeing your emails, Lorraine.
So yeah, I think what we're
Sorry, I've
finding.
moved again.
Yeah, so what we're finding on sickness is that it is getting higher this year, and it looks like the year-end figure will be slightly higher than what it was pre-pandemic levels. The other area is what we call total arrears as a percentage of rent due. Now that's quite it's quite difficult to understand just from the KPI. The rent due is around £57 million a year of rent and service charges, and the total arrears is a combination of what's called current tenants arrears plus former tenants arrears, and this historically is very high because of the way we account for former tenants arrears. Just taking current tenants arrears, the figures within Derby Homes is pretty much consistent with the national picture, but it's our former tenants arrears that is on the high side, and that's purely down to our procedures around write-offs. We don't write off a debt until it becomes statutory barred over 6 years old, whereas a number of other providers will write off that debt at an earlier stage, probably after they've exhausted all normal recovery actions. So that figure at the minute is currently showing as slightly higher than what we would like, but we're hoping to do a very large write-off of debts over 6 years old this month, and that figure should come back down, and I'm hoping will meet its target by year end. But we do need to do it what we call a technical write-off and clear a considerable amount of debts which are over 6 years old on the system.
Right.
Okay. Hang on, it's gone again.
Sorry,
Sorry, Lorraine.
I'm not doing very well with this at all. Well, the reason for this is because, can you see it again now or not?
No.
Okay. I think it's because I picked it up from the CMIS report rather than rather than having it as a presentation. I think I'm going to have to make sure next time that I don't do it this way, because it's not very good. Can you see it again now?
That's fine. Yeah. So the next three items which I'll deal with are to do with our progress in delivering new homes. So the first item there, new homes started, is behind target. Two things influencing slow starts here. One was we've got a large scheme of 8 properties at Chesapeake in Chesapeake Road in Chaddesden, which we had a problem discharging the planning constraints on that, so we couldn't get started. We've actually started this week, probably enough in quarter 4, but we struggled to start there. And also there's a great deal of pressure in the delivery in this quarter 3 was essentially through acquired properties we bought on the open market, and there's a great deal of pressure on the housing market this last year with prices rising and demand for the kind of properties we're in the market for. So we weren't able to buy the numbers we were expecting, so that had an impact on delivery on that one. That follows through onto the number of homes actually delivered rather than started. That was behind. We had a scheme at Gerrard Street where 4 properties were they were delivered in quarter 4, weren't they? Yes, there was a couple of schemes were behind, which were slowed down following COVID, and because of the difficulty in buying properties on the open market, that impacted on completions too. So it's been an issue throughout the year. What I can say is going forward into 22-23, we're going to be accelerating the new homes programme by introducing a couple of work streams with external contractors. So we do intend to step up the scale and pace of delivery. Okay. The third PI there, affordable homes delivered. That's new affordable homes delivered since 2008. So that's over the last 14 years, and we're 15 sort of behind. So if you think 14 behind this year, that's probably the reason why. So hopefully we'll catch up, because there's 1 or 2 bigger schemes we intend. There's a scheme of 37 and a scheme with a dozen on, which we intend to start next year. So over the next 2 years, we should be catching up a little bit. So it's encouraging.
Yep.
Long term. Okay. Do you want to pick those last two up, Michael? That rent loss one, is that more your?
Yeah, well, I can explain that in a bit more detail, because it does seem a bit counterintuitive when we've reported, really good void turnaround dates on what we call active voids. But the reason why this rent loss figure is showing is not meeting its target is because there is, or there has been in the year, a delay in completing what we call passive void. So a passive void is where a property is put to one side and a number of modernisation works are done to that property before it is re-let. Now, I've actually looked at this KPI, and I think we're on the very prudent side of that that forecast, if I'm honest. So again, this might be another one that by the time we finalise Q4, it comes very, very close to the target, because what we've done throughout the year is we've really monitored in a lot of detail the passive voids, and as Ian will confirm, we've actually completed a large number of them, and the number now outstanding on passive voids is a lot lower than it was at the start of the year.
Yes, yeah.
The final KPIs on the number of tenants registered for the My Account online. We had a target of 9,000, and I think we was actually going to hit that target until we actually cleansed our data, and we'd actually in error counted a number of tenants who had registered for My Account but had subsequently left. So obviously once we knocked those out of the fresh list, it brought the figures back down. So it is likely that the figure at the end of the year will be closer to the 8,000, but at least we know they are current tenants. And if you think there's around 12,500 tenancies, if there is 8,000 at the end of the year, you're looking at around 2/3 that are online, which I haven't got the comparisons against other providers, but just anecdotally, 2/3 seems a really good take up, and as part of our digital strategy going forward, we will be looking to utilise and put as many services on the My Account area as possible.
But I think the cleansing the data, I think this is a really good exercise, because you get complacent, and it maybe reduced the number of account online stats, but at least you know now the genuine customers.
There is a hand up, Bob, but I can't see who that's from.
I'll tell you.
Did you want me to stop presenting?
It's Jan. Jan's got.
Yeah, thank you. Just to say that I've just got a couple of things. The first thing, Michael, is for yourself, is on the sickness absence, and you've talked about sort of like looking at what we can do to address sort of the mental health and stress that is emerging as a trend. So is there anything new that is being proposed? And if not, how are you sort of going to encourage more people to access what is already in place?
You're right. There is a lot of support available through what we call our workplace wellness referral system, and there's also referrals through to occupational health as well, in addition to any support the individual may be getting through their GP. What we're finding is that the overwhelming majority of stress and anxiety cases are not work related, so sometimes it's very difficult to address the underlying reason for that issue if it's not work related. But we haven't got anything new, shiny and golden bullet to solve it at all. But what I think is worth reinforcing is that there is significant support mechanisms in place if staff are willing to engage in what is available via the employer, and obviously as a sympathetic employer, when there is a return to work, there's phased returns, etc., like that to accommodate the employee back into the workforce.
Okay, thank you. My next point is just a technical issue. I'm using CMIS. So I'm like looking at the reports on my iPad, and actually the presentation is, even though I've got it in full screen, it's actually missing the last line of the of each of the slides. So it's just sort of to say, when you're kind of like doing the slides and getting it all ready, can somebody double check what it's looking like for the end user as well, if that makes sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, thank you.
Jim, are you giving up? Are you?
Well, I'm not giving up, Bob. I'm never going to give up. It was more about just adding into Jean's question, which Michael answered. We've also got workplace stress risk assessments that we carry out. So if somebody is identifying that they have anxiety or stress, we've got a key document that we send out to them, and we help them complete it. They can complete it in their own time, and then when they do come back into work or they want to talk to their line manager about it, it's less difficult for them to talk about because it's been pre-completed. So they're not having to go through it and talk it through there and then, which can cause additional anxiety and stress. So we've used that a couple of times with a few of our individuals in our department, and it's been really successful. And we've had some positive feedback from that. And I know that that's being right across the organisation.
That's good. That's good. No, but I've got. John, have you got another question?
No, Bob, that's it. Thank you very much.
That's fine, thank you. Lucy?
I've got another question, but was Lorraine going to finish? Was more presentation to go through? And shall I pick up the questions up at the end? Sorry, Lorraine, can't hear you.
Sorry, Lucy. Yes, no, that was the last of it. So if you've got any questions, yes, bring those in. And then I think Bob wanted to have the debate about whether you thought that was enough to present or whether you'd want anything more.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the two things I was going to raise was firstly about the difficulty of purchasing properties at the moment because of the state of the market. And I think that there are likely to be two things that are happening in the next months and short number of years. One is the cost of heating homes is going up, and I think that next winter people will start to think about whether or not they want to have their own property or whether they want to downsize, and I think that will lead to a small increase in the occupancy of dwellings, because people will choose to move that way to make life more affordable. And that may mean that the cost of properties stops going up. We may find that the market stagnates a bit, which would be, in my view, a good thing for lots of people.
Yes.
The other thing that is going to be happening is that the private sector housing standards come in I don't know, somebody will know, in probably, is it a year, 2 years time? And as that happens, the people who are currently letting properties in the private market, some of them will think it's actually too much hassle to upgrade, and therefore those properties will appear on the market as well. And for that one, it may mean that those houses then become affordable, but we will need to be doing work on them. And I think we need to plan into our work programme to know how we would address that situation if and when it arises.
One thing I would say going forward is that how we spend the emphasis on buying properties on the open market is actually going to change. We're going to be limited on how many we buy, and we're going to focus more on new delivery and spending that money in a different way. So the points, I take on board both points you're making, but the rush to buy properties, the emphasis is changing. So we should be able to buy the number that we're going to be set a bit easier than we have done this last year.
Okay.
So.
I'll go along the top row then, Tony.
Thanks, Bob. When I was looking through the full report, the bed and breakfast and temporary accommodation bit, it occurred to me, do we look at sort of mobile homes or prefabs? I mean, they go up quickly. They can be, relatively warm for temporary use.
Shall Shall I come in there? No,
Yes,
it's not
please.
something that we've looked at, Tony, to be honest. We have got a huge piece of work that we're currently looking at our use of bed and breakfast and to try and eradicate it and, get to the point of where we don't have any bed and breakfast use. Realistically, we've got a large number of temporary accommodation properties that we use that are outside of the normal home finder. And again, we'd be struggling with finding locations to place caravans and get permission. Some cities have done it. London have used metal containers that they've converted into small one-bed apartments. So it has happened in some places, but it's not something we're considering at the moment.
Right.
Can I just come back to Lucy? I had my hand up for Lucy. Was the fuel poverty situation that we're all going to be involved in as it comes forward. We're already thinking about that in my area. We're already starting to try and understand what the decisions are going to be for our customers. Is it to buy food? Is it to put the heating on, or is it to pay the rent? And so that is having an impact already on our design of our sort of prevention work to make sure that we have that in our mindset. And we've been having conversations with Michael and his team to be able to understand how we can get better access to money advice and signposting. So we're already on that. And with regards to some of the properties, the difficulty in buying them, and I know Ian said we're limited to buying them. The difficulty is that the landlords, I think, Lucy, have already started to sell up, and it's a seller's market. And if it's not a seller's market, then what's happening is we're seeing more and more landlords serving Section 21s and wanting a higher rent. So getting the existing tenant out because they can't afford any more on the rent and trying to get a higher rent. So we've already got this cycle happening, and the difficulty where we can't react is the policy that we have where we can't buy a property off a landlord that's got a tenant in it. It has to be vacant possession, and then so that's a complexity for us. And also, not to put a downer on it, if there's say 5 of us who are in this meeting all bidding for a property, and we're all interested in the property along with us, Derby Homes, the council. By the time we get to put a bid in, all 5 of you have bidded, probably outbidded each other before we can make a decision. And then the price is so high because it's a seller's market. We, as a local authority, can't justify spending £10,000 extra on a house that we don't value to that number. So we're kind of scuppered in every area we look. I hate to be the bearer of bad news.
Can I just ask what the origin of the policy is that says we can't purchase a property with a tenant?
Because we wouldn't be gaining any stock, we'd just be gaining another tenant.
Yeah, I get
so
that,
the majority of and that's the DCC's policy about any acquisitions. And it's interesting, Lucy, because it's come up in a recent complex case that myself and Jenny and many other people are looking at. But it adds difficulties because hypothetically you could be buying a property that's got a family in it that are under occupying, so it would go against the allocations policy. So there might be a 4-bedroom property with 2 of them living in there, great tenants, but we're buying the property and we're allowing them to under occupy, and we would soon run out of money if we were to buy every Section 21 that came through our door. So we only tend to buy vacant possession properties that we see can add value to our stock. So, for example, if we see a property that's a 3-bedroom and it's on an end, we'll absolutely all over it because we know we can convert it to a 4 or 5 bed and address a lot of other complex issues.
So a property that is occupied by a family who have disabled kids and the house has already been adopted for them, who would be who are at risk of being turfed out by their private landlord, we can do nothing for.
I mean, I'm assuming we're talking about a current one that's ongoing, and as this is a public thing, I'd much rather not comment.
You're right, Jim. No, you're right, Jim.
I'm more than happy to have a comment.
Mine was just an example of a challenging situation.
It is very challenging. It's very challenging because there's a lot of situations we have to factor in, and we have to make sure that when we look at any property that we acquire or allocate, that it complies with our allocations policy.
Okay,
and I think
that makes sense.
In view of Jim's comments just a few seconds ago, I think we should just draw a line under that one, Lucy, for the respect of the case. Michael?
Yeah, just going back to Lucy's point about support to various tenants, the Derby Poverty Commission has pulled together a directory of various grant funding that's available, and it's called like a cost of living information sheet. So that's now available on Derby Homes Net for all teams, not just our Derby Advice teams. So we can identify grant support to tenants, and obviously that's available to all the organisations that are part of the Derby Poverty Commission. So there is a lot of support out there. It's just getting,
I think that's a trick,
people signposted to that support, and particularly what we're finding with the hardship fund that's available. If you get a referral from an accredited organisation like Derby Advice, etc., the one is effectively just dished out there and then. It's a very, very quick turnaround where the support is.
We've had a huge push on it in my area, and also in Lorraine's area. And Lorraine was on leave at the time when it came out, and we have a huge number of Derby Home staff that are registered, that are allowed to put a referral through, and the money is instant that's transferred over. There's checks and balances in that the DCC do around making sure it's not a duplicate, but it is a really, really good tool for us to have.
Just as a final
and everybody. Oh, sorry, Bob. And
no,
it's
on,
not
Jim,
just, it's also as well the caveat we've taken that while that money's there and available from Bernard Fenton's team, I think it is, every single person that signs up with us, we make sure we put the referral through for them as well. So they've got a nice kickstart at the beginning, and it's percentage wise. It's if it's a couple or with children or multiple children, that the money goes up, and it's delivered in. I do believe it's delivered in supermarket vouchers. I think you can even spend them in Waitrose, from what I'm led to believe.
Yeah. And on a final thought, Jim, I've got a niece who's subject to Section 21, and the devastating effect it has on them is incredible. It really is. I understand the scenario, but as you say, we've got to move with the reality.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's all part of what we're trying to do in Housing Options, Bob, is, the earlier we can find out about these, the more help we can do in prevention, the more intervention we can do, hopefully being able to have conversations with the landlord. And we have got a small pot of money that we're able to utilise and to try and encourage the landlord to help the tenant stay there for longer, because ultimately we haven't got the stock for them to move it, out of and into. It's simple as that.
And I think Michael hit it on the head as well when he said about signposting. That's probably the trick to a lot of these things, signposting is crucial.
We're all over it, Bob.
I'm going to say picking the case up at the start.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. That's, I think, no more questions. Can't see any hands or things up. Right, I think we'll take the conversation now, Lorraine, while it's still hot and Kaz is still here. I think, on a personal basis, my own thoughts, I'll come back to them, but I open it up to the operational board members. How do you think this presentation of the statistics now, because the reliance then relies on board members reading papers before they come to the meeting. I'm opening the floor up. Anyone? Lucy?
Yes, I think it's better.
Dennis? You like it, Dennis?
Yeah, I do.
I think we've got all the information there in the papers that we can look through if we want to, and celebrate the really good results. Yep. But it is the things that aren't going quite right that we really need to be concentrating on. So I think that's good.
It is. Tony.
Yeah, I agree with Lucy. I think it's a better presentation once we sorted the IT out.
Yes, I was going to say that it'll be better once Lorraine gets her acting gear. Perhaps Lorraine ought to find somebody else to do the IT and accept it's not her forte.
Perhaps Tony. Jan?
Yeah, I agree as well. And we really do need to be concentrating on the exceptions and looking at what we can do to make them not exceptions.
That's right. And you've all said what I was going to say, so that's great. And I think it's unanimous tonight that it's a step forward. And Kaz, your statistics are presented well, and I think this is just what's it called, nail it on the head. I think the way we're doing it now is far better than going through sheets and sheets of paper, and the onus is on the board member to prepare themselves, and I think that's a good thing. So anybody else got further comments? I think that's a good idea, Lorraine, and Kaz and your team doing a great job.
Yeah, just to mention, I mean, all of the graphs that you see in the main sort of presentation, all the information is generated by a whole range of teams.
Yeah, I know
so,
that. Yeah.
You know, thanks to them, because we do quite a lot of hard work in between quarters, in between months.
Yeah.
So a lot of the information you've got there really is extra information that was requested last time, particularly in terms of homelessness and temporary accommodation. So thanks to all of our colleagues that have contributed.
And Louise, could you minute that in some form to say thanks to all the hard work being done in the background? Because there is a lot of hard work, I know there is. If you could just maybe formally minute that to say thanks.
Yes, of course.
Any other questions? Anybody? This one? Right, that's a Kaz, that leaves you free to go down the pub or have a coffee or whatever you're going to do. According to me now, we're on to what we're on. A2, A1, got that? A2, forward plan. Any questions on the forward plan? Anybody want to comment? I think it's fairly straightforward, Tony.
Bob, can we just go back to A1?
Yeah.
The responses to some of my questions on Part B, I think have missed the point a little bit.
All right.
The first one, which is got down as item B5, it should be B3 really.
Yeah.
The table in there said under staff complaints, there were 24 complaints upheld and 18 partially upheld out of 27 not upheld. So over 50% of the complaints had some verification. And the question really is, you know, is there some systemic issue there that we ought to be learning from?
Yeah, I see that, Tony, yeah.
I can jump in there. I mean, I think we do, Tony, you know, I mean, and Michael will support me on this. We really do hone in on the lessons learned around complaints. And it is something that comes through each heads of service, and also we take it through to our management. So I take any complaints that are related to my service area through to my managers, and if we feel there's a training issue, we absolutely instigate it. And also as well, we use some of the complaints that come through as training sessions. Yeah. And so we actually deliver them. And I see Jenny's nodding because I know Jen's done a couple recently where we've had a complaint that's come through, and it's not necessarily that we've upheld it into the sense that we're completely wrong, but we appreciate that maybe on the day where the officer spoke to the customer, probably the message wasn't clear, or there was a miscommunication, or a tone wasn't quite right. And we take that forward, and we do use that on a regular basis as a training function, and it is absolutely hot on our radar for us to be able to learn from those issues.
That's good. Dennis?
Yeah, the Audit Commission says that we should learn from our complaints, but
absolutely.
Do we?
I'd like to think so, Dennis, but the Ombudsman's news, as you know, now has got tenants on their advice thing, so tenants are more involved in dealing with complaints now.
I was talking, I was on mute. I was saying I know we do from a personal point of view, Dennis. You know, absolutely, it's an engine management warning light, isn't it? When something comes through across your desk, when a customer raises an issue, it's your opportunity to actually investigate that and think to yourself, is this a problem? Is it a one-off? And we have to factor in as well that unfortunately the business that, you know, my service area is in, we don't always give good messages. So, you know, when we give a message to a customer, it's probably not one that they want to hear, you know, that they're not going to get that extra housing need. They didn't come top of the short list. We don't owe them a housing duty. They're all genuine, real messages that we have to deliver. But unfortunately, they're not always the most popular. And we do see quite a few that come through to us that are on the back of a negative message delivered that we've got no option to not deliver, right? If that makes sense.
Okay, Jean?
Thank you. I think, Tony, that this is a really good point that you've raised, because I think that it's a bit about how do we, as an operational board, sort of keep a monitor on this and kind of like to see if there are any trends or anything. Because the fact that if you said that, you know, that we've got about 50% that actually were justified. It's kind of what can we do as an operational board, and I take on board what the heads of service are saying and what they're doing, but actually it's a bit about our responsibility as the operational board to challenge some of that as well, and to see sort of how things are going to improve. And I don't quite know at the minute how we do that, because we just have the figures. We don't have any information about trends or anything. And off the top of my head, I don't quite know how we can do that, but I think it's something that needs looking at, so that we can keep an eye on it. Does that all make sense?
I mean,
absolutely, John.
I don't know if I can jump in or not, and I might be shooting ourselves in the foot.
No,
but, you know, is this not an opportunity for us to look at some sort of report coming from the lessons learned meeting that goes to the operational board? Because there is that analysis sort of being done at the operational board, at the lessons learned meeting, and it's being looked at, and so all complaints that come in are centrally looked at and monitored. So maybe it's a lessons learned report that's introduced to the operational board. And I know, Michael, you've been working really closely with Annabelle on this, haven't you?
Can I also mention as well that you will see it started at the last board, but we're doing a lot of work around the surveys as well at the moment.
Yes.
And making sure that the information that comes from surveys is followed up with customers when they want it following up, but also that we're picking up the trends and we're looking at how we can improve the service as a result of that. And that information will be coming through to you regarding surveys. I was at a Housemark conference today. We're looking, obviously, there's the new white paper and the consumer standards, and all housing providers are looking to implement new processes to make sure that they are going to work in line with that. And that is all around customers being able to challenge their landlords. So I think, yourselves as well, working alongside the improvements we're going to be making on that can certainly, there should be a lot more transparency, and we can work with you on that one.
Steve, then Michael.
Yeah, I was just going to say basically, probably other than Jim's area, because they have difficult, circumstances and things they have to explain to tenants, probably the most staff complaints probably come from repairs. So, I mean, obviously, I agree with. I'm part of the lessons learned sort of group with Michael and Annabelle. So clearly, we do need to look at that, and if we can feedback some way, do it. I think it's difficult though, because although complaints might be upheld, sometimes upheld because we can't disprove them. So to give you a couple of examples, if we get quite a few staff complaints about drivers driving their vans, and if somebody comes along and says, well, this guy cut in front of me on an island and blah blah blah, relatively speaking, it's very difficult to disprove it. So generally we'll try make sure that we don't think our guys or girls are driving badly, but ultimately sometimes we're going to find it really difficult to know the facts. So sometimes things like that can be upheld to a degree because we can't disprove it, so we can't take the tenant that it's wrong. Other things can be a bit like Jim's area, I suppose. If we say no to somebody for something they want us to do, so we might go to repair a door and they want a new door and we say no, we'll get complaints for areas like that. So I'm just sort of trying to pinpoint. It's ever so difficult, but what I would assure you is if we get complaints, for example, from the same person or about the same person 2 or 3 times about attitude or something like that, or there's some way we know it's happened, we will absolutely be all over it, because clearly we need to treat our customers right, and even our non-customers, if it's a driver in the street or something that knows our van number.
It's just Joan's point. We just see a table of numbers. So
yes.
We have no idea what's behind it, and in some respects, I don't want to know what's behind it, but I'd like to know that you're dealing with it.
That's the thing, isn't it? What have you done about it? And I think it's perception versus reality in some cases. Michael.
Yeah, I think Jan's correct to raise the point, but I think the way for us to feed back to the operational board is in line with how Lorraine's suggested it. The lessons learned group is mainly looking at issues that are cross Derby homes, whereas it may be that complaints are against one individual and there isn't a system problem across Derby homes. It might just be one individual. Lorraine's absolutely right to link it through to the consumer standards, because we will have a a reporting requirement going forward, and it makes absolute sense if we've got to communicate more with our customers for the operational board to be that that voice, if you like, and that outlet as to how we disclose that this particular area. And as Lorraine says, that's an evolving piece of work on how that obligation will need to be fulfilled going forward. And obviously, we're along with all the providers, we'll be guided by what we need to disclose.
Yep, I take that on board, Mark, and I think, as Jan said, it just highlights, you know, that yeah, it's important the operational board knows, and you know what's been done. And so that's a good suggestion, Jan. Michael, I think you're right, and Lorraine, I think the way to do it is what you suggested.
Can I just
yes,
other two points then? The tree planting I was suggesting, I'm pleased to see Ian thinks it's a good idea. Got no specific ideas, but obviously if Derby Homes is also celebrating 20 years, combining the two with the Platinum Jubilee would be good.
Yep.
So can I just respond to that? The only thing that we do have to be mindful of is that tree planting only happens at certain times of the year, and I don't think it will fit in with when the Jubilee is, Tony. So we will have to look at that, because I know there is some tree planting activity happening right now. So I'd be surprised if we can actually link it to that specific event.
Okay, it was just with what's being encouraged in terms of tree planting, it seemed like a good idea when we had the tree report as well.
But could
I'm not suggesting we shouldn't do it, and there is a lot of tree planting activities that we do get involved. All I'm saying is that I'm not sure whether it would be the right time of the year that we can link it in at that time. That's all I'm saying.
Anything wouldn't be at that. It can't be on the date, because was it high summer, isn't it?
Yes.
So, and it's like we won't plant a tree probably on the day of our 20th anniversary, but it's just something to bear in mind, and we might during the year be able to do something to mark it. That's all. That's all I could say at the moment. So.
Yeah, perhaps a tree planting ceremony we dedicate it later on, type of thing.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Sorry, finally, the response to my voids query. The report basically said you had 493 voids last year and 604 this year. And the reply says you usually have 800 a year. And the answer was, the question was really, is there a reason for the difference in the numbers?
Yeah, I thought I answered that, Tony. Sorry. Ultimately, our numbers of total voids is around 800 a year, which is fairly consistent most years. This year we've had a fair bit more right at the beginning of the year, and it's gradually sort of leveling out, possibly by the end of the year. But potentially this year there will be more. It's very difficult with voids because we don't necessarily know why people are totally ending the tenancies. Some of it could be, though, that because of COVID, people didn't want to move during the heights of COVID, and now they've decided that things are sort of getting, when things sort of get a bit better from COVID, they'll want to start putting the properties up again, or they might want to try and start moving and things like that. So, it's probably more issues like COVID. But to be honest, by the end of the year, because obviously you're seeing the end of Q3, I think it's going to be quite a lot closer, as it is to other years. But this year is an anomaly, to be honest. Does that answer your question or not?
Yeah, it does. Thanks, Stuart.
Okay, mate. Nice.
Tony, did you not get the responses? Or were they not satisfactory? Can I just check?
They didn't quite answer the questions I thought I'd raised.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you did get them, yeah. Operational board forward plan then? Sorry, Tony, I'd forgotten about you. Operational forward plan? Is there any questions or observations on that? Okay, no questions. That moves us on to A3, the Youth Alliance grant.
That's mine then.
Right.
Okay, so this is a request for the operational board to approve a further £100,000 again this year for the Youth Alliance. You may remember that the Youth Alliance came about because, at one stage, Derby Homes used to put little bits of funding into youth activity all over the city, and it wasn't particularly coordinated. And it was quite an exciting prospect when the Youth Alliance was formed, because it was a collaborative approach. It is a collaborative approach between the voluntary community and social enterprise sector, together with the council and the youth provision in the city. And it's about coordinating support for young people. And as part of that, organisations can apply to be part of the Youth Alliance. The relevant checks are all carried out. And when we've got somebody that we want to refer in, they will look at what is the best support for that person, where there isn't support available, you know, what organisations might be able to provide something. So it is working really well. 4.5, it just goes into some of the key achievements for the year. There's been an increased partnership number for the Youth Alliance, so there's now 8 strategic partners working together and a wider approved alliance of 12 providers. So it's growing all the time, so there's a lot more scope within that. A large scale mapping exercise underway in the city to identify areas where there is youth provision, so and to see where there's gaps, so to make sure that, you know, everything's mapped out, there's not duplication, that where things are needed, that they are provided for. So that's just a couple of the things there. I don't know whether you want me to go into any more detail around that, but basically it is we do think it's a better approach to put the one amount of funding into this and to help it to grow, and it has achieved some good results.
Yeah, Jeanne?
Yeah, I think it's a much better way of tackling some of the issues and providing some activities and things. And really pleased to see that you've already got 85 referrals as well. So to that. And also would just like to have it noted that I was really pleased with the equalities implications as well on the report, which I know is something that we've been asking about. That report's a sort of a better with that. So if it could be noted that it's got very good equalities implications on the report. So thank you.
Thank you, Jeanne.
And I support Jeanne in so much as we've discussed this with Lorraine and other people, and I think it's great to have a central pot that's controlled. And as I say, I think it's a great idea, and I think it's long overdue. Any other questions? No, fine. We'll move on then to A4, I believe it is. Or A5.
Is that one approved then, Bob?
Oh, sorry, Lorraine. Sorry, no, my head's not. I work better in the office, you know. So any objections to the approval?
No.
In that case, we'll take it. That's an approved. Lorraine, you'll be quite pleased to know we can continue to support the youth. I apologise, guys. My head's not with it. I'm not quite clearly thinking, so I apologise. A4.
Yes, that's me. Review of the voids lettable standard. So basically, we normally review the lettable standard every 3 years. It's been very slightly longer this time because of COVID and us trying to engage with our customers. So what we do every 3 years is review the lettable standard internally with our own staff, with voids and housing management staff, and also with our customers. So we get the customer voice involved and others to sort of give us their opinions, tell us how we can improve it. And a nice extra thing I think we tried to do this year, which is in Appendix A of sort of a review of how we consulted, was that we actually got a snap survey also done for 121 customers. So that, to be fair, this is probably the most it's ever been out to for our customers to sort of tell us what they think about our lettable standard. So you'll see in Appendix 2, I think it is the lettable standard, or Appendix B rather. And there's been a number of changes. Now, some of those things we've already been doing, and we just made sure with our customers that they were happy with that. We've talked, you know, there's been a fair few things such as more decorating and more fencing that we put up on properties now that is a good thing for us to do, to set our customers up in the right way, and everybody's sort of happy to for that to carry on and do the best that we can do. Our customers were particularly interested in us looking at the voids after they're finished. And so in point 4.5, you'll see that there's a number of ways that we try and make sure that the voids meet the standard that we try and set. And the customer, particularly the good one for me, is that a number of our customer voice and other tenants are quite interested in being checkers, if you like, to make sure on a random basis they pick a void or some voids each month and then come back to us and tell us what they think. So it's nice that not only do we have our own staff and our own supervisors, but also our customers saying to us, you know, that property is great or it's not great and there's things that you need to work on. So that was a good thing. Another nice thing for me, and what we've tried to do this time, is make the policy really easy to understand, because a lot of these things can be technically written, right, and just phrases or terminology that nobody really gets. And I think some of the nice feedback we got, and in fairness, they helped us with it, was a number of our customers had a look at it and told us what they thought. And I had a meeting with Errol and Pete and some of the resident involvement team and some tenants where they specifically said, well, I think this isn't very easy to understand, and we changed it. So we've made a physical effort to understand. So hopefully you had a chance to look at the Lettable standard. I think this is one that's, as I say, been reviewed by the most people ever as to what, you know, we want our Lettable standard to be. Clearly, just so you know, obviously we look at other organisations' standards as well to make sure that we're not missing on something, some clever sort of things they're doing and we're not. So we've really tried to look at it, you know, as a whole, to make sure that the standard's what our customers would want to have.
Dennis, Lucy, then Tony.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good report. The one I'd like to pick up on is Appendix A, Item 2, virtual panel consultation.
Right.
Yeah.
Apparently, it went out to 121 customers, but only 14 responded. And the first 5 or 6 have all got a decimal, percentages,
yeah.
And the last one's got a figure 7. So why the two differences? Does it make it because 65% and 71% and 93% makes it look a whole lot better than 5 or 6, because it's 8, 9, 9, 13, 13?
I think it's a bit like adverts, Dennis, isn't it? 65% of people surveyed. I think it's good to have both figures, and I've always thought this of what does it represent. And when you watch the adverts, I always sit and criticise them and say percentage, because it might only last 3 people.
Yeah, because you say 10% left, but 10% of what?
Absolutely, Dennis.
Absolutely. I know what you mean. I mean, we should be consistent. 7 customers is obviously, as we all know, out of 14, 50%. But you're right, it should be one or the other.
Well, I think
I'll take that
should be both.
to our,
you could put percentages, but put the figure in brackets.
The number as well. Okay.
Whatever,
that's fine. Yeah. Okay. I'll speak to our our team that have put this together for us. And we'll make sure.
But a good report. Don't get me wrong.
No, that's fine, Dennis. It's all good. Thank you, though.
Lucy.
I also thought it was a good report, and I think that it's a nice, clear description, and it's jargon free. But when I read through it, it seemed to be written by a committee, and it wasn't quite sure whether we were addressing this to the tenant and saying this will happen, or whether it was being addressed to the repair operative who was saying this should happen. And I just think it needs a little bit of a tidy up and a look through. There are 1 or 2 other little things like we're going to remove all carpet grippers, but we are, and I'm really pleased about this, we are leaving some carpets in. So it needs to be removing carpet grippers when no longer needed, rather than as a blanket thing. And as the other thing, I don't know who gets new fences putting up, but we need to have a policy somewhere that says that new close boarded fences should have hedgehog holes in them, so that the hedgehogs have hedgehog highways through our Derby Homes gardens. So I think it's good, but I just feel it could be even better if we knew who it was for and was consistency of language, but not to make it more jargon, please.
Yeah,
just keep the jargon free,
okay.
keep it jargon free, but
yeah,
a little bit of tidying up. possible.
Fair enough. I mean, I totally agree with you on that. I mean, in some ways, it is written for our tenants and our staff, but I agree with you when we spoke earlier today. So we can quite easily go through it again and make sure that it's consistent in what it's saying. I mean, and we did speak earlier about hedgehog holes in fences, and you know what? I think it's something that we don't naturally think about, to be honest, Lucy, and it's a lovely idea. So I've already spoken to my voids manager today and said there's some good pressure on us to put hedgehog holes in the fencing. So that's something that we'll be looking for in the very near future.
I'd love to know what Errol said.
I'm not answering that.
No comment.
But he will do it because
He
Lucy
will do
wants it.
He will do it.
They also recommend swallow boxes in the eaves.
Oh, Tony, come on. Give us a fighting chance.
You could put in special bricks for bees as well, but you know, if you're putting up a fence, let's get the fence right. We'll worry about the eaves when we're doing the repairs.
Yeah. And it's the most fencing we've ever done nowadays, and it's right for us when a new tenant moves in that they don't have a rickety old fence falling down. We should start them off right. So it's something we're pushing more and more. But at the same time, as Lucy's really good idea, why wouldn't we want to do that? It's just great. You know, what's the big deal? I did find out, Lucy, by the way, that even concrete, the concrete boards at the bottom are now made, some of them with holes in. It's not that we use those so much, but if we ever get to a point where we do, so at least you know I do listen to you. We will potentially use ones with holes in the bottom as well.
It's nice to know they exist.
Absolutely.
Tony,
take
it away.
Yeah, I've got a couple of things just to query. Under fixtures and fittings in the kitchen, you gave an extra single wall point for a 2-bedded property, but a extra double wall for a 3-bedroom. Why not, with the amount of electricity units and accessories that people seem to have these days, wouldn't doubles everywhere be better?
What number are you looking at, Tony? Just so I know. Sorry, I'm just
10.2.
10.2. Yeah, I mean, for me, I must admit, thinking about it, it's no harder in a way to put a double in than a single, pretty much, is it? So I think that is a good point, actually.
Hang on, Steve. Isn't that those last two things? They're talking about wall units for storage, not PowerPoint sockets.
Oh, that's sorry. Is that what Tony's on about? Yeah. You're not on about the 2 double PowerPoint socket, then you're on about the bottom 2 points, Tony.
I read that as a PowerPoint socket. You're right.
Lucy's right. It's the wall unit. So my answer to you is no. That will stay as it is. It's a wall unit.
Fair enough.
Thank you, Lucy.
The other thing was further down, 11.5. All burglar alarms will be removed. Is there a reason for that?
We've not fitted burglar alarms for a number of years, to be honest. It was something Derby Homes did many years ago, and basically it's something we no longer do. These things, I mean, they're not connected to the police or anything like that. As much as it's good, it's very expensive to maintain burglar alarms these days, and a lot of hardware, so they're actually taken out on voids now. Yeah, so it's not something that we do, and it's not something we've done for a number of years as well, to be honest. I mean, one good thing I would say to you is there is a point in this report that talks about where applicable we will service CO meters, so carbon monoxide detectors rather than meters. Just for the board's knowledge, in the last few weeks we've been looking at fitting every property that we have with a carbon monoxide monitor, because the government are potentially bringing out a new rule. We started doing that about 3 weeks ago, and actually the letter from the government has come yesterday saying we would like all local authority landlords to have a carbon monoxide monitor fitted into the property. So all properties that we have got, potentially have got gas, a boiler or a gas fire or something like that, will have carbon monoxide monitors. So in theory that's correct what it says, but it's a bit better than we're fitted, because we'll all have it fitted in the next 12 months.
And Steve, can you say I've got it in my property, Steve, so well done.
The other thing on that sort of topic is, aren't all your new properties having sprinkler systems fitted? In which case, shouldn't you have something in there to say you'll check they're still working?
Not all. I'd let Ian answer whether all new properties have sprinklers fitted, but we would serve. All I would say is one of my contract managers, strangely the electrical one, does have a lot to do with water sprinkler systems. I don't know quite why, but I believe we would normally look at those on a sort of servicing basis anyway. I don't think we just leave them. So I think every so often you would have to test something like that, Tony, to make sure it works, because there'd be nothing worse than a fire and the sprinkler system going off because we've never checked it. So I think that's done anyway. We wouldn't necessarily do it on the void. We'd probably have more of a cyclical servicing regime for something like that.
I was just thinking in terms of your statements in here under the Lettable standard, whether it's you would check it was operational in some way.
I don't know how, but yeah.
It might be that if we do it annually, we'd probably leave it on the annual service, because it's not something like a gas or electric service that you have to do when you relet a property. Okay. It probably is easier for us to do it on a cyclical service. I will check that though, just to make sure I'm telling you.
It's a good point, Tony.
Yeah.
Michael, I think you and then Dennis.
Yeah, just to clarify the position on sprinklers again. Again, where Derby Homes is doing the new build, sprinklers will be a consideration and if I'm honest, a likelihood in the properties. But of course, when the council is procuring again off the open market, there will be no properties that have sprinklers fitted as standard, because again, developers don't put those things in as standard. And just to add to Steve's point, that there is quite a significant annual servicing cost associated with sprinklers. So, you know, we really need to make a decision whether or not sprinklers should be in all properties, or whether or not they should be in properties where we think the tenant is, where it's more likely to be at a greater risk, depending on the use by the tenant.
That's a difficult call. Dennis?
Yeah, mine just throwaway comment about Tony's about the burglar alarms. Nobody bothers anyway if it's going off, do they?
No. That's a reality,
of course,
Dennis, you're
I
right.
would, of course, always want to agree with Dennis on those things like that, to be honest. Yeah.
Right, and do we approve the new standards?
Yep.
Can I just ask, are you happy for me to go away and make these sort of minor changes that Lucy's talking about without bringing it back, or not? Because I can obviously go away and do what we're asking.
I put it to the board.
Yes, I'm fine.
I'm happy.
I trust you, Steve.
I'm happy to.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll trust you.
Thank you.
Right, moving on. I think it's, I've got it here. Let me just see my title. A5, local lettings plans.
Yes, that's me. So thank you for having me this evening, everybody. I've enjoyed myself so far. And Lucy,
Nice
I just want to say thank you that I've got nesting hedgehogs in my garden and I love them. So I'm in full support of little holes, Steve, in fences. For what it's worth. So I've come to talk to you guys today about local lettings plans. There hadn't been a review done of our four existing lettings, local lettings plans for some time. And so the recommendations here are kind of threefold. We've reviewed the existing local lettings plans. There is a proposal around an introduction of a new, more flexible local letting plan that we can use as and when we feel we need to. And then there's a third one around using local lettings plans for first lets for new build or acquisitions where we've got 6 or more properties that we're introducing into an area. So if I start with our existing plans, so we had 4, they haven't been reviewed since about 2013 at a previous many years ago operational board. I couldn't tell you the reason why. However, I have made sure that in this review we have built in some robust kind of review process as part of that. So I don't know whether everybody's had time to have a look at each one of these. Our 4 main ones that we've got at the moment cover Rivermead House, the Alder Walk flats, the flats down at Crompton Street and Gerrard Street we've kind of combined as one, and then the Alton Road quadrant. Right. So the new build properties that we did in the Osmaston development a few years ago. And they cover, you know, Rivermead House just as an example. There's obviously specific housing management issues around Rivermead House that we feel aren't necessarily covered anywhere else. And obviously the whole point of the local lettings plans is to help us create, sustainable communities and tenancies, and respond proactively to any housing management or neighbourhood issues that we might have, that without those we might struggle. They're allowed for within our allocations policy, so that's where the provision lies. We're not about restricting people access where we don't need to. It's all about, making it inclusive, making the neighbourhoods safe and where tenants want to be. So we're making them the least restrictive we possibly can. And I'm suggesting that we review them on a yearly basis, but also at 3 monthly intervals, and amend them as we go. We would expect to see progress being made, particularly if there's a housing management issue, for example. And so that would keep us then on the least restrictive, kind of path as we possibly can be. Right. And if they need to be removed, then they can be. There might be some things that will always remain. Again, taking Rivermead House as an example, we're suggesting that there is a no dogs policy there, which would be an exception to our pet policy.
Yes, yeah.
It's just not suitable. They're taking, I love dogs, I have one, but taking them up, in the communal lift is perhaps not the best, the best option to outdoor space. We're also suggesting that children under 10 specifically don't get allocated properties at Rivermead House. About half of the properties are 46 of our properties at Rivermead that are actually 2 beds. So we would still allocate to children, but they don't lend themselves very well to supporting that. There's noise complaints. Again, there's no access to outdoor space. There's a lot of work that's been done over the years around Alderwalk, Jarrard Street and Crompton Street. They're 1-bed properties. They're in, they're not high-rise flats, but, they're in a flat type block. There's a mix of neighbourhood issues and tenancy issues there that we're working hard with the police and have done for many years, and the neighbourhood office to reduce those issues. But I think that there is still work ongoing that needs to be done there to address some of those kind of community cohesion issues. And I've built it into the review process that we do include our our partners and agencies that work in the area, so we can have that reflective view. The new one, has anybody got any questions about those ones before I move on?
Just a quick one, thinking specifically of Rivermead House and the fact that you have leaseholders there.
Yes.
Do their leases exclude dogs and things like that? Which, I mean, that seems sensible to me. But the general leases I've seen say, I can't keep pigeons in my flat, which seems sensible, but I can have a dog and a cat,
Yes. Actually, I don't know, and you're right, it would be very sensible, and I can go back and ask our leasehold manager whether there are any restrictions specifically for Rivermead, to say it would be an exclusion to our pets policy. So
it seems silly to have tenants can't have a dog, but leaseholders can.
Yeah, no, I agree. I can check that.
Yeah, consistency.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Okay, Jenny, carry on.
Thank you. So the next one I am suggesting is that I've noticed, my background is housing management. I've been with Derby Homes for a long time, and I've been the social housing options manager now officially, rather than the temporary, for a few months. Been here for about a year doing this. It's become more apparent, I think, that we are having properties that become available because there has been very specific issues, either around significant antisocial behaviour or around criminal activity. It's not a wider community issue, it's a very specific that tenant issue. But I think it's only fair that we give the community a little bit of respite there. We've often struggled to relet a property because it's known that there's an issue within the community, and it's made that that relet process difficult, and the neighbourhoods are understandably a little bit nervous. So my recommendation that I've put forward is that either the local housing manager or the antisocial behaviour manager, if they're aware that a property has become empty for one of those reasons, that they can put it forward to the panel and make a recommendation about, as that initial let, we would use a local lettings plan, which could vary depending on what the issue was.
Could you give me an example of that, Jenny? A simple
Absolutely.
example.
So we had got two examples. We had a police closure order carried out at one of our properties in the Alveston area quite recently. It was a police action that was taken. We've now got a 3-bed property that we need to relet. It's at the bottom of a cul-de-sac. The neighbours are concerned about who's going to be put in that property. And so we would look, we haven't used it in this particular case because obviously it's not being used, but in that particular one, we would perhaps look to allocate the property to somebody who can prove that they've held a successful tenancy elsewhere.
Right.
We don't have, kind of issues. And it can really be as dynamic as we need it to be, depending on what the issue is. If it was a significant noise issue, we might look at that. If it was something with, pets, we might look at those issues. There was an example in Chaddeston where we had a row of terraced houses. The properties either side of the issue both became available. They got refused maybe 10 or 11 times between them because, again, it was known in the community that there was an issue there. So I think it would just allow us to react a little bit more flexibly and try and create these sustainable, communities and tenancies that we're aiming for.
Yeah, and just to add in that as well, Jen, it would work in hand. It would work in tandem, wouldn't it, with the allocations policy? So
absolutely,
because the allocations policy is all about choice-based letting system, whereas we have a local letting plan aligned to the advert before it even goes out. It gives us the ability to be able to, when we shortlist, make sure that the shortlist is relevant to the local lettings plan rather than just anybody that's applied.
Yeah,
thanks for that, Jenny. Helps me understand it now, Jenny. Thanks.
No, brilliant. I say, and these are preferences. We will give preference to these people, but like Jim says, it's always in line with the allocations policy, and it just helps us have that little bit of flexibility where we need to. The third recommendation then is around the new builds and acquisitions. So we're suggesting that where we have sites of 6 or more new properties that we're introducing into a community, that we would do the initial lets, again in line with the allocations policy, but given preference to, for example, the properties that we built in Osmaston, people who've got a local connection to the area, people who might be, and again this can be dynamic depending on where they are, people who are downsizing and therefore releasing a larger property back into our stock, so we're getting something more from these ones, and that's worked really well in other areas. It also lets us, for those ones, take the views of our communities, our elected members, of what might be needed for that area, what we're trying to achieve. So that would be my third recommendation. I don't know if there's anything that anybody wanted to ask.
No, I think there's anything controversial. I think it's just common sense, and it's good. It works in tandem, and I think you've got something tangible there to work with, but it also works in tandem with Jim's, as he says, with the standard policy. It's good. Jan?
Thank you, Chair. I thought it was a really good report, and the appendices were really good as well to back up, sort of the report. The only, and also, Jenny, I thought that you delivered it really well as well.
Yes.
And you came across being kind of like you really understood it and know what you're talking about, and I felt really reassured. The only thing I would say that I would like to see on the report, because I know that there will be some, is that there are no equality implications on the report.
Oh yes.
And obviously something such as this, and you probably have considered it, but it's just not included in the report. So just kind of like for going forward, I would expect something to be in the report about that.
I agree, Jan, and if I could just jump in there, I agree, and I think probably we should have reflected back to the equalities impact assessments that have been carried out for the allocations policy, because this is just an additional tool from within the allocations policy. So that would sort of be the aligning equalities impact assessment that was only carried out in 2020, but we should have referred to that. You're absolutely right.
And I think this is going forward. I think it's the way forward, Jan, isn't it? Dennis?
Yeah, I agree with Jan. I think it's an excellent report, Jenny, and I agree with it.
You've passed the test.
Ah, yes.
Well done, Jen.
You get to keep it, Jen.
Any other questions? Any other points? Carry on, Jenny. Are you finished?
That was me done. If
That's
everybody's
fine.
happy, yeah.
That's fine. Okay, well, Jenny, you have two choices. You can either stay and listen to the rest of the report, or you can go home and put your feet up and relax. Well, you are at home, aren't you?
Yes, I am indeed, yeah.
Yeah.
Rather sadly, I'd like to stay if that's
not a problem.
okay.
It's not a
Yeah,
problem.
thank
We
you.
had this chat this morning, didn't we?
So Jim
Nothing
said,
is not
okay.
enthusiastic, yeah.
Right, moving on. So we approve the policy. I think we all agreed with that, have we? Yes. Thank you, Jenny. And may I just add my bit? I think, you know, it's your first time on your, say, presenting for the operational board. We have met at fun things in the past, but you've done an excellent job tonight for your first report, and I think it's brilliant and well done.
Thank you very much.
And I won't let Jim take the credit for it. It was your report. Okay, guys, A6.
That's me.
Right, Jim,
So I've got a really hard act to follow now, haven't I? One of my managers.
You certainly have.
Sort of set it up for me. So thank you. This is the review of the tenancy policy. So I'm bringing this forward as a refreshed Derby Homes tenancy policy for discussion, and then for your approval to subsequently recommend it to go to the main board.
Right.
The reasons is that we want to make sure that the operational board has an input into the Derby Homes tenancy policy. And so some of the supporting information is that on the 9th of June, the council refreshed its own tenancy strategy. And this strategy sets out the position of what the tenancy use is and providing the basis for action around the council's housing stock, and also a steer to other registered providers. One of the factors that have changed in the review that the DCC have done on their strategy is the granting of flexible tenancies, where previously that wasn't something that was thought to be a positive thing, albeit though that they are still very much focused on their actions will be the position of the council is that they will still be looking at secure and assured lifetime tenancies. But what that does mean is that with the Derby Homes tenancy policy, we are able to have a reflection on that within the DCC strategy. So we can look at flexible tenancies. And so the Derby Homes tenancy policy is all about, and this is the key bit, it's all about our own properties that we own. So this is what this policy is for, allowing us to do something different if we want to around 100 or so properties that we own. And I'm sure Ian will tell me, or Michael, that I've probably said is too many. So I don't want to go through the whole policy, but as you see, what this report highlights is the key sort of tenancies that we do within Derby Homes, and I want to pick up on the flexible tenancy. So this is, you know, the refreshed tenancy strategy does, however, introduce the use of flexible tenancy specifically for accommodation in line with Derby Homes homelessness and rough sleeping strategies. So that will be factored in around our RSAT properties, and any grant funding is dependent upon these flexible tenancies. Additionally as well, for me, I think the thing to look at here is where we start to use the flexible tenancies is around some of our larger properties and some of our properties that have had significant adaptations carried out of them. And so when we become aware that the properties are no longer fully being utilised, whether it be the adaptations or the bedrooms, it gives us an opportunity to review that and look at that and move customers out and look to secure them an appropriately sized property and bring those really, really valuable properties back into stock. It highlights the report and the policy around the other key areas of tenancies that we have, which is non-secure, the family intervention tenancies, some contractual tenancies around allowing us to discharge our duty for around homeless. And that's kind of it, really, unless anybody's got any questions.
Any questions, Lucy?
I think you're on mute, Lucy, unfortunately.
Sorry about that. And I very much support the idea of going for flexible tenancies. I think it's a good thing. And I just want to say, in terms of philosophy, as a housing provider, we might not want to do that because it's much easier to keep the same tenant. You haven't introducing the opportunity for voids, but as having the responsibility to make housing work for people, it's the right thing to do. So I think it actually accepting it is quite a philosophical view for an organisation to take, and it's a philosophy that I very much endorse.
And I agree, Lucy. I think, and also for us as well, having the responsibility of the homelessness side and the housing side, it makes absolute sense for us to have that mindset change, because it gives us a throughput of properties and customers through our stock.
Yeah, absolutely. But I've got two questions which I just want people to think about. The first relates to 5.2, and I'll give you a page number if I can find it. of the actual document. It hasn't got any page numbers. I apologize. 5.2, which is talking about tenancy sustainability, and it lists the type of help provided, and it's got a list of, I don't know, a dozen bullet points. What's not included here is helping someone to develop their own network of support. There's nothing here that says introducing people to the community, making sure they've got to know their neighbours. And I think that could be the absolutely key thing. And I don't know whether it's something we can do working with local area coordinators, or whether our tenancy officers would do it as well. Because if you know who your neighbours are, then you've got somebody to say to, I'm getting behind with my rent, what should I do? Or you can say to somebody, you know, I've not lived in Derby before. Can I, you know, where does one get secondhand furniture here? And I think building those community connections, telling people about, you know, what the local church or other faith building is doing, whether there's a you know, there's a community association that goes on trips or whatever. Those sorts of networks, I think, need to be on that bullet list. I don't know what to call it. Somebody else will have to think about what to call it. But I want to do something about community building, neighbour meeting, that sort of thing. So that's the first thing. And somebody can say, I think that'd be good. And the other one is 7.3, but it isn't 7.3. It's the one about pets. There's a comment about pets somewhere here.
We've got a pet policy coming up. Maybe that'll come.
Oh, it's the pet policy. Apologies.
That may cover it. That may cover
it's the next one.
Yeah.
It's the next one. It's just
I
that
got
one.
off lighter there because I was trying to think. I can't remember a pet's bit in there.
It's the next policy. Sorry.
Tony, then Lorraine.
Come off mute. That's better. On these fixed tenancies, particularly with the flexible tenancies, particularly with the 4-bedroom houses where you put people in because they've got loads of kids and they're growing up. Do you agree a sort of term that, you know, once your children have grown up and left home in 20 years' time, you're going to have to downsize? Or
it's about monitoring the situation, isn't it, you see, Tony? Because, like, you know, my rule of thumb, the message that I always say to our homeless advisors is when we've got a family that come in and they need a 3-bed or a 4-bed, and we've just let one, we're not going to see that one we've just let for the next 20 years roughly, because the age makeup is going to be anything from around 0 baby to probably 10 or 11, and it's going to take a long period of time. But that 10 or 11-year-old might leave in 10 years' time, and that's our ability. When they're 21, they might still need a large home, but it might be a 3-bed home, and so it's about us having that ability to be able to flex and being able to review those situations on a regular basis, working hand in glove with Lorraine's service area.
I understand the objective. It's just, how do you do it? Are you going in every sort of so often and saying count the number of children, or what?
I mean that is part of the program that we'll have to develop. And, you know, I think it would be that we would say if a family moved in with 3 young children needing a 3-bed, we would say that we'd be looking at as sort of like a 12-month rolling contract that just renews and renews and renews.
Yeah, I know. I go back long enough where, you know, you used to have enough staff that you'd have a housing officer visit you once a year just to see.
I remember having visitors. I remember when I was brought up in a council house, so I remember the visitor coming round.
That's another conversation, Tony, isn't it, we've had? Anything else, Tony?
I've got something. Strategy review and policy does not mention assured short hold tenancies. I think that's because the paperwork I had originally didn't cover this thing. So ignore that.
Right. Okay. Lorraine?
Yeah, sorry, I'm just trying to remember now, because I was
about introducing to the neighbourhood.
Yeah, there's a couple of things I was going to say. I was going to say about to Lucy's point around the support, the localities development work that's going on at the moment, and the better together approach. If you may remember that I spoke to you about the customer priorities and how we're doing some overlaying work and working in partnership across the council. That sort of work will definitely look at building capacity within communities. I would have to think about how it will be linked to a tenancy policy, because it is a wider partnership policy, but there is definitely work going on around that and looking at how we can build the capacity and develop some of the things that happened during COVID, where actually neighbours did rise to the surface, and we know that people can be good neighbours. Trying to build on and develop that work and not lose it. So that is still there, Lucy, and it is still being worked on. Just wanted to reassure you of that.
For you, Chair, I expected that sort of thing to be happening, but I think it's something that could be specifically mentioned in terms of the types of help provided. Would be.
Yeah. Well, we can go back. We can go back and have a look at that. But I think
another bullet point
that we have got in our plans.
Yeah, because it may be that somebody who's reading this actually knows that they've been living there for 6 months and they still don't know anybody, and they don't feel they've settled into the community, and they could say, well, it says you might be able to give me help in this. What can you do? And it might prompt them to actually come for help.
Yeah, and that's the reality of it.
Sorry, the other thing that we're doing a lot more now is linking into when we know that there's going to be a big scheme built. As housing management, we're getting involved very early on, so that we've got input into the development of the scheme. But we can also think about that sort of about allocation around community cohesion. I'm thinking specifically at the moment. There's a lot of development. There's the Ada Bliss development that's being talked about in Chester Green, and that's still quite a way off being built, but we're already involved in that and starting to think that how do we, that's going to be a whole new community of people coming into an existing community. We need to be planning for that and trying to get it right.
You're right, Lorraine, and that and what you've just said there, and with this absolutely, fits in with the previous report that Jenny brought for local lettings plan. And part of Jenny's role that I've introduced with her doing is having regular meetings with housing strategy. So if a local letting plan needs to be developed, housing strategy also involved with it, along with the local voice of the councillors and any community groups. So it all ties in together.
Tony?
Yeah, you used to encourage residents' associations and neighbourhood forums, which brought people together, particularly in particular areas. All that seems to have died and gone away. Perhaps it's something that we ought to reconsider at some stage.
Well, we've still got neighbourhood boards, Tony, and stuff like that, but I don't know about the forums.
We have forums in Littleover. Littleover have them.
I'm not aware of any in Abbey.
Yeah, because I know that I'm part of the neighbourhood forum board in Alveston and Bolton, so they are still going on.
There is a neighbourhood board in that ward. I can get you the information, Tony, if you want.
Well, if it's active, it doesn't seem to publicise itself. Most people I know are not aware of it.
Well, as Dennis would say, communication.
It's not. I mean, it's not one that's run by Derby Homes.
No.
But the neighbourhood teams at the moment are sitting in my area temporarily. So I mean, I can find out the information for you if you want to know.
I mean, our estate, the Ricknold estate, used to have a residents' association, which was supported by the local housing management. It worked very well. Everybody paid normally £1 a head just to give us some finance. And that got sort of superseded by moving into a bigger area, and people then lost interest because it wasn't so local.
Okay. Any other questions, points, anybody? Right. Well, we'll put it to the vote of the members. Are you happy to approve this report? Any objections?
Yeah. Can we add a bullet point in under 5.2 or whatever it was? Just something about building links in the community.
We'll do that, Lucy. Yeah, no problem.
Okay, with that, yes, fine.
Okay. Any objections? No, thank you, Vines.
Louise, can you just capture that for me, please, just so I don't forget?
Right, I believe the next one is A7, Derby Homes Pet Policy Review.
Yes, that's mine. Okay, so we've reviewed the pets policy, and there's not an awful lot of changes to it. One of the things that I did look at is there are going to be some changes expected within these new consumer standards around pets, but our policy already complied with the new requirements, so that was fine. We did a consultation exercise, and the things that have been changed are all what customers have actually said that they wanted to see changing around this policy. Feedback highlighted that we don't always check for new pets in the household at property visits, and we've made sure that now is included in our pets procedures to make sure that it does always happen. They also said that they felt more information should be available on who to contact if they wanted to get a pet. We've listed there is already quite a lot of information out there, but we are reviewing our website at the moment, and we will also make sure that when we're updating information that we send out that we do keep this one on the agenda. Customers wanted to see enforcement action being taken when a breach of the pet policy had taken place. The policy does allow for enforcement action to be taken through the tenancy agreement, where we can evidence that there is a problem, and we do take action when we know that somebody or it becomes apparent that somebody is not complying with the policy itself. Customers highlighted about dogs in flats as a particular issue. We've already mentioned about the local lettings plan at Rivermead. There are some situations where, particularly if they're living in a property like Rivermead or a flat environment where there's communal areas, where when we're considering a pet permit, we will look at whether it is viable to have a particular animal there, and and we will make the decision based on consistency and good reasoning. But we do make sure that we allow animals if they're needed for people with sight problems, with disabled people, and we've considered that as part of the quality assessment to make sure that people aren't discriminated against if they do have some form of a disability. And customers suggest we work in partnership with the RSPCA, and I can confirm that we already are doing that.
Yeah.
So unless there's any questions.
Okay, Lucy. No. Can't hear you, Lucy.
You're on mute.
Sorry. Paragraph 7.3, where you've had your pet turned down.
Yeah.
I just feel that in most situations you're allowed an appeal process, and I just feel that there ought to be some sort of appeal process. I think it became almost a human right at one point.
Okay.
It isn't.
I thought there was something in there.
7 point. It's actually 7.3 under paragraph 1.3. The numbering is a bit weird.
Right.
Yeah, it is actually. That needs sorting out, doesn't it, Lucy?
Yes. I hadn't noticed that before.
I always thought there was something in there.
Is it the terms of the tenant? Is it the tenancy agreement is 7 point? Are those under the numbers under the tenancy agreement? Maybe.
Yeah, you might be right.
Yes, yes, it is. Yeah.
From a housing management background, I could see how it could have been. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just flicking between the two and trying to catch up. Yeah, would you make a note of that, Louise? Now I'll look into that, Lucy.
Yeah, that's fine. But we obviously can't change it if what's being quoted here is the tenancy agreement. But it might be something to think about in due course.
All right, Lucy. Tony?
Yeah, similarly, you're talking about the tenancy agreement as a way of enforcing it. For leaseholders, you need to look at the lease as well for when you're trying to enforce that. And it's probably a particular instance for non-resident leaseholders where they're subletting it. You know, if they suddenly gets a pet and they're not aware of a pet policy even exists or what the terms of the lease are, it's down to the leaseholder acting as landlord to ensure that you meet whatever the terms of the lease are.
Okay.
Can I just ask whether this is something that might be included in a sales policy and conditions as well? My daughter is in Newcastle and she lives in an ex-council house which was sold 30 years ago, and she's only allowed to have one pet.
Really?
But in fact, she says, I'm having guinea pigs, and guinea pigs you should not keep alone because they are social animals, and therefore she's busy ignoring it. But I shouldn't tell you that, should I? But
and it's recorded and it's live.
And it's on YouTube.
But as a principle, it means that we actually need to think about that as well and make sure that we're not leaving something that is archaic and inappropriate in the future. Fair point.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I can't remember exactly what the wording was in the government guidance for what they're looking for these policies to say, but I can't remember off the top of my head. But I know that ours does cover off what's expected in a policy of this type.
Right.
I know with leases it's difficult to change them once they're written.
That's right, Tony.
Very difficult.
Okay. Any other questions, please? Are you happy to approve the new policy?
Sorry.
Any questions?
A little bit.
Sorry?
Bob, can I ask a question? I've had my hand up for a bit.
Oh, I missed you, Kevin. Apologies. deep apologies.
I was hiding in the corner. Right, on page 88, 1.6, where tenants request permission for unusual pets, we will need to be certain that these will be kept in the right conditions. Who will implement that? Who's going to check, and how often will the animals be checked on?
Well, when somebody requests, when someone requests that the pet permit, that somebody will go out and check that it's going to be living in suitable conditions. There's no annual check or anything on that. It would only be if it came to our attention that it wasn't being kept in the way that we would expect it to be kept, or it was noticed that was happening, that we would be able to take action. It's a very difficult one to police.
Would we work in conjunction with the RSPCA though, Lorraine, on stuff like that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
If we came across anything like that, I mean, we have done on a number of occasions. We've come across people that have abandoned properties and left animals behind. There's been a number of situations that where we've had to report people because we've been into the properties and the way that the animals are living. But we can only issue the pet policy, the pet permit at the time based on what we see at that moment in time. Things can change, can't they?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions, anyone? So, Tony?
No.
No. So we're going to put this forward to approve the pet policy as discussed tonight with any amendments we've also approved. Any objections? No, that's approved then. And I think it's the last one. Garages and store policy review.
Sorry, folks, it's me again.
Oh, the Lorraine show.
It's quite a short. There's not a lot of changes to this policy either, and the ones again that have been made are as a result of customer consultation. So the customers said that that policy didn't mention issues that can occur when a tenant decides to run a business from their garage. Now, even though this sort of activity is prohibited and it's included as an explicit condition of the garage tenancy agreement, we have now put it in the policy, so it's also very clear within the policy as well. Customers said that they felt that the requirement for 1 week's written notice to terminate a tenancy could cause a problem if a tenant had to make alternative storage arrangements. So this has now been amended to a requirement of 4 weeks notice, in line with our standard notice period when we're terminating a tenancy. Over recent years, we flexed the policy to allow people to store things in the garages. Some of our garages are quite small anyway, when you think, you know, at the time they were built, and how cars have grown over time. So we flexed it so people can use it at their own risk to store items in. So I think to give them 4 weeks notice if you've got a garage full of items is reasonable now. So we've changed that as a result. Since the previous review, we've improved the way we promote our garages, and we've actually got very, very few empty garages at all now in the city. They are being used well, which is not really surprising, given that obviously storage spaces, you know, is needed, isn't it, for people? So you know, we're doing really well at letting them. I think there's probably only about 10 that are vacant, and that's only because the repairs and things are being done on them.
If I could just interject, everybody, are we happy to waive standing orders? It's now 8 o'clock, but we're doing well.
Yep.
Okay. Dennis, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, I've got a quick question for Lorraine, but it's not about garages. So we approve the garages first, and I'll ask my question.
I'll come back to you, Dennis.
Okay.
I'll come back to you, Dennis. Tony?
Yeah, just a quick one. Looking at the maintenance and management of garage sites, who's responsible for maintaining garage doors? You know, the up and over things and things like this. Is it the renter or is it Derby Homes?
I think it's Derby Homes.
Yeah, we are, aren't we, Steve?
Yeah, garage doors, if there are garages, if there's something wrong with them, we'd repair them or replace, depending on what was needed to be done.
Okay, it just didn't say anything on that sort of score in the management of garage sites bit.
Just to reassure you, Tony, I rented a garage at one time from Derby Homes, and the door did get twisted, and they did repair it without any problem.
I would say, Bob, any repair. So if the roof leaked, for example, we would sort it out. It's our property, we own it, we're renting it. Clearly, if something needs repairing, we would do that.
Lorraine, I just want to throw a bomb in the room, as they say in the world. If someone, we say about garages and businesses, but what if they're running a business from their shed?
Their shed.
I'm not going to name names, but I've known this happen.
Well,
honestly.
I mean that would be within their property, wouldn't it? That was in the would fall within the tenancy agreement. It would be permitted.
That's fine. That's fine. Dennis, your wait is over.
Yeah, I mean, to me, has Derby Homes stopped sending tenants notices about improvements to their property?
Improve? What do you mean about your kitchens and bathroom improvements?
No, we're having new windows fitted.
Right.
But all I got is a telephone call from Nationwide saying we're going to fit your new windows. Well, I hadn't got a clue. So I rang Derby Homes to see if it was genuine or a scam.
I can understand that, yeah.
But Derby Homes haven't, you know, sent us a letter or said you're going to have new windows like in the past. We always had a group to look at it or something like that, but nothing at all.
Ian,
you should have had an initial letter for the year's
No letter, no nothing.
Well, that's interesting, Dennis. I'll investigate that. That gives me something to go at tomorrow, doesn't it? So yes, you should. The properties on that year's programme should have an initial letter, and then have no problems with a follow-up letter nearer the time of the installation from the contractor. That would be the best way.
Well, we've had no letter from the contract. We had a telephone call out of the blue, and I must admit they did say we're working with Derby Homes.
Yes.
But, you know, I've had other scams that said we're working with Derby Homes. So I rang Derby Homes. No, that's quite all right. After waiting 14 minutes on the line to get through.
No, right, okay. That's that shouldn't have happened. So I
No,
mean,
that's
to be
fine.
honest with you, it's been hard enough getting nationwide windows to get any work done this year. So that's encouraging. They're actually coming to see you, but you need to be better than that.
Well, they're coming Saturday morning to see me, so wait and see. They've
Okay.
been to measure the windows, so
That's good. That's good.
So this visit's to come to fit them, is it?
well, I think they're coming to see to fit because they said they're coming between 8 and 12. They're going to sit 8 windows in between 8 and 12. They're going to do bloody well, aren't they?
Well, you say that, Dennis, they're quite quick. But I'd just like to reassure you, Dennis, that you're unlucky because I had a new front window fitted and the door, and they contacted me and everything. So I can't understand that.
Anyway, something to investigate. Thank you.
No, that's fine. Yeah.
Thanks, Dennis. Thank you.
Anybody, any other business before we move on?
That's why I brought it up then, because there's no any other business on there.
No. No, and the time and date of the next meeting, crikey, June. Doesn't time fly?
Was that
9th of
one
June.
approved? Sorry, Chair. Did that get
Sorry,
approved?
sorry, Jim, you're right. I do apologise, everybody. I've got something going on in the family, and it's just. I'm sorry, I've not been myself tonight. You're right, Jim. We need to approve it.
Sorry, Chair.
Pets policy. Sorry, garage and stores policy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And once again, apologies, folks. Any other questions? And I welcome everybody for being here tonight, and I thank you, and we'll look forward to our next live meeting, I hope.
Yeah,
So
I
much
do.
better. And Jenny,
me-
you'll notice the difference.
I'll just let people know that I'm up for election this year. So if I'm not with you in June, which could be either because I've not been re-elected or I've not been put onto Derby Homes Board.
Yep.
Thank you for being here and working so hard for people of tenants of Derby Homes and Derby. I think it's a really good board. I like being on it.
Well, Lucy, as you know, I've known you for quite some time, and you know, if you weren't on the next session, then I'd be really miffed.
I hope I'll still be here, but I mustn't
Yeah.
count my chickens.
No,
No.
and you've made a good input,
luck.
Lucy.
Glad to see you've got a
Good
year.
luck, good luck, Lucy.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Kevin, may I just ask you a question? Above your head, there appears to be lots of knitting wool. Is it you who does the knitting?
No, it's the missus. She does crochet, not knitting.
Crochet. Okay.
Kevin, you should have said yes.
I should have, yeah. No, she's busy knitting for our new baby, 2 weeks old.
Oh, exciting.
Crocheting.
Crocheting.
Dennis, is something you wanted to add?
No, sorry,
No, it's
forget
all
to
right.
take it off.
Okay, then, folks, I think that concludes our business. It's been an interesting night. I thought, the new performance we're doing things is magic, and I look forward to going forward with that. I thank everyone for their input and their patience, and hope to see you soon. Take care.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Bob, for
Thanks,
joining
Bob.
us.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night, all.
Bye.